Welcome to the February 18th meeting of the Outreach and Network Guild for the Lifeboat Academy. I am going to be playing the role of Ronnie today as they are feeling a little under the weather and so can't make it to the meeting. And with that in mind then, welcome. And as is our custom, we usually start with a land acknowledgement. And I always make the space available for people to practice their land acknowledgement in a safe environment. So is there anybody who would like to practice a land acknowledgement today? So I will go right into it then. There is the off chance that Norm Leach will actually be here on the Lifeboat Academy grounds in 2 weeks. Or three weeks. So that's still to be confirmed, but what an exciting prospect. And so in a very interesting way, I channel Norm here onto this chunk of the territory. And I remind us that we start by acknowledging the land because the land was here before we were, and the land will remain here long after we are gone. And everything that we know, experience, and need to thrive comes from the land and returns to the land. And so when we start by acknowledging the land, we are in fact acknowledging our rightful place in the web of existence. And we start our meetings that way as a reminder to keep what we're doing here together in perspective as well. And that we're all in this together and that we are all woven together. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, it is just how it is. And in acknowledging that, we also acknowledge a debt of gratitude to the indigenous cultures of the world that have discovered, rediscovered, and maintained that wisdom. And in doing so, we also acknowledge an obligation of righting harms that have happened, specifically around relationships with indigenous peoples, but also how the wounds run deep in our culture. So we need to be doing some healing work between ourselves, each other, different peoples, and our more than human relations. And so this is an encouragement for us to gladly take on that obligation of care and to do what we can to make things right where we can. And so I encourage us to find our place in the landscape in a literal way, in a grounded way. So to the extent that it's comfortable where you are, I invite you to take just a moment to feel your body in the chair where you are. Feel the force of gravity holding you to the chair and feel that support coming up through the earth and through the structure and through the chair itself, holding you up and holding you in place. And become aware of your breath. New fresh oxygen entering on the in-breath. And old spent carbon dioxide leaving on the out-breath. Fresh energy coming in. And relaxation, letting go of what no longer serves you, being released. And just take a moment in your mind's eye to see where you are in the room and see how that room relates to the building you're in and how that building sits on the land. And just draw your attention to the north and the landscape and the relations in that direction. And to the east and to the south and to the west. And then take one deep breath in, breathing in all your connections to all of your relations. And then on the exhale, just let go of anything that keeps you from being present with us today. And when you're ready, come join us back in the circle. All right, so we'll just start with a quick check-in, and I'm going to keep it real simple today. How are you doing? And the circle, as I see it, is Roland, Pam, and me. So, Roland, over to you. How are you doing today?
Fine, fine. Just got back from a morning of at my bakery job, and uh, now I'm here. So hoping that I have uh, enough left over to be able to be present. As you can tell, I'm that simple sentence. I was already searching for my words. So we'll see. Uh, Over to Pam.
Um, I feel fairly collected and interested in what we do with the suggestions for the meeting. I was, I'm carrying a bit of a trail from the final meeting that I had with some people in the co-op with whom I had a conversation with April in concern with, and it was a follow up to a meeting with a committee that I was uncertain about being in right relation with, and I was. Um, I was buoyed by that experience coming with April and how helpful it was to get the objective opinion from somebody who's well versed in exactly the dynamic that was kind of problematic for me. And it enabled me to move through both of those spaces, one with the board itself, and then moving into the committee and wrapping that up in a way that I felt maintained good relations going forward. And I'm not sure about the learning for other people, but I know that I learned a lot. So I'm coming in with a sense of gratitude for that experience that I had with a lifeboater, and how practically helpful that was at a moment that was kind of a hinge moment for my
Mhm.
sane relations. So Ben.
Wow, I feel like this is a brilliant segue right into what we have on the agenda. And and I am entering feeling a little buffeted, not in a bad way, but I was sort of explaining before we hit the record button. I've just had a bunch of weird little twists and turns, so I'm feeling jumbled, and which is not a bad thing. It's just kind of feels like I feel like a boat being tossed in the wind and having to sort of readjust the rudder and the sails. And it's like, well, wind's going to do what the wind's going to do. And, I can respond. So anyhow, I think I feel like that really was a great segue into what we are, well, at least some of the proposed items on the agenda. And so I'm just going to go, hopefully that's up on the screen now. Um, yeah, there we go. So in the email, we had three suggestions, which is what are the next steps for the storytelling slash testimonials? How do we move that forward? We again on the sort of tentative for discussion, the process of leaving Meta, and more generally, I think this is mushrooming into a little bit of a conversation about what's right relations with social media, given all sorts of security concerns and balancing privacy and security concerns with staying open and creating communication possibilities. So that's kind of like a placeholder for that. I guess that's that last one too. How do we use social media? And the one thing that I'm gonna add to that mix is social roots and how social roots might fit in to how we use social media. And I can talk a little bit about that if it comes up as something we want to talk about. So we always have a chance to co-create the agenda. So once around, is there anything that you'd like to add to the agenda? Do you have preferences for where we put our effort and emphasis? Over to you, Roland.
I have nothing to add. This looks good. Over to Pamela.
Yeah, there was something I sent rather late. Let me take a look at my email. Yes, right. Regarding website, regarding outreach.
All right, cool. Well, where shall we start? I'm going to propose that we start by talking kind of broadly about social media, maybe do gathering considerations around that, because I think that'll sort of set the context for then some of the specific things. So yeah, I'm gonna propose as a starting place, we'll do gathering considerations process. So all ideas are good. Any concerns, any hopes, any ideas for what we might do, specific next steps. The only gentle rule is try to limit it to one per round, and we'll do multiple rounds and layer it up. And our expectation is that after we do a few rounds of that, often after 3 or 4 rounds, it seems like something kind of often emerges as a kind of a clear plan almost for next steps. So any concerns with that as an approach? All right, so Roland, over to you to get us started. And of course, you can always pass. That's part of the choice that you get to make. So considerations around how we use social media.
Just in general, largely how we use social media.
Yeah.
And so there's how we currently use social media, and then there's I guess what's the value of social media, and how can what's the 20 that gets us 80 with social media? How is it useful? How can it be useful? And maybe also, how has it been useful? What's been our experience so far? So I guess I'm trying to figure out for myself, because just social media is it's a big topic. And which part do we want? Which part to start with? Where to begin? Yeah, and I guess, yeah, I would say probably what's the 20 that gets us 80 with social media would be a good place to start. No, maybe not. It might be like a lessons learned kind of thing. Like, what for those of us who have been doing it, what have we noticed? For those of us maybe who are just seeing it, what are we noticing? Yeah, something like that. So over to Pam.
So I take it that we're just throwing things in, not responding or elaborating. Um, yeah. Um, I don't even know how to begin to evaluate it. So that would be one question I have is how do we even begin to evaluate? You may have metrics or something that guide numbers or data points that have meaning. I don't know. Um, let's see. As primarily someone who sees the social media on the Meta platform, that's all that I can speak to in terms of um, usefulness, but I'm not sure what I have to say might be a little too specific, but I'll just say it and then you can sort of guide me into a different zone if need be. I found that the use of the memes was becoming increasingly relevant to me when I was trying to just drop seeds in other spaces. Um, so it's interesting to consider if there is no longer that continuity in the spaces that I, for example, am in. Um, how do we navigate a fragmented social media, a fragmented and siloed social media, a fragmented, siloed, and probably overwhelmed social media landscape? Ben?
Yeah, some really great questions. Um, well, and I really like the question about the metrics and how you framed it in terms of what metrics have meaning. And I think that's always been one of the real challenges is we've never aspired to going viral. We've always we made a very conscious decision to focus on relationality and um, so what are the metrics that actually matter in terms of developing relationships? And there is a progression. And I think one of the things I'll say about social roots that I really like, and I'm going to try to hold myself to the consideration. So the one thing that I'm going to add to the conversation this time is social roots works with what they call the three circles model, which is this idea that there's the 1%, the 9%, and the 90% in any kind of social movement. You know, the people that are the ringleaders, the people that are kind of the core and helpers, and then a lot of people that are on the edges, you know, sort of lurking. And they all of those rings have value, and your relationship to all of those rings is important, but it's different. You know, like actually, Pam, what you're saying about the dropping the seeds, like that's how you relate. You keep that pathway open to the 90% on the off chance that they suddenly feel motivated to connect. But that's not the same relationship that you want with the 9%. And so yeah, I'm just throwing that into the mix because I think that's maybe part of the fragmented and siloed and overwhelmed landscape. Um, yeah, I'll leave it there. And over to you, Roland.
Um, yeah. Well, feedback on the memes is really helpful. Um, and um, I often wonder about explore and so just recently we've also started to share blog posts, Ben's blog posts and Substack daily reflections, not daily, but when relevant. And so we haven't really explored a whole lot of other things. You know, we'll put up advertisement for events every once in a while, and we haven't gotten a lot of uptick in anyway. So I don't know enough about what's going on in. I'm supposed to just stick to one thing. I'm trying to stick to one thing, which is why I keep stopping myself because I'm about to say something else. So, there is the possibility of exploring other ways of using social media. And I mean, there's the perennial issue that we're also limited in terms of time and energy and so on, which, you know, seems to be starting to shift a little bit, which is great. But that's part of the question of what looking at what we've been doing and how we've been doing it, to reevaluate if it's a keep on keeping on with the resources that we have, or is it taking the amount of time and energy that's being spent on social media and altering it to see if something else would work or something else would catch. Yeah. So I'm just going to throw that in as my one thing. I think it was one thing. Over to Pam.
Um, I'm not sure if I have anything else to add into this round. I'm finding myself considering what's being said and feeling filled up by what the implications are behind almost everything in terms of communication across platforms or intention. Like, again, I'm not exactly sure if I'm okay. So is there a clear intention of what is wanted? What is the purpose of the social media interface at all? And as someone who has been on the outside using it as a meme drop, that was one thing that I found helpful. But with leaving Meta, how do you evaluate, like the amount of energy that goes into maintaining something like that? And yes, it was helpful for me, and maybe it was for a few other people. I don't know. How do you know that? And how do you make a decision based on so many unknowns, I guess? And the time and energy thing is so huge. I would have big gaps in my paying attention to anything that was put out by the Lifeboat Academy and anything else because it just was too much. And I am not the only one who says that. So those factors, I'm not sure how you put that together. And
Yeah, I mean, I think this is my response to how do you tell is experiment. And um and the advice I give as an evaluation consultant is you identify the challenge And that's what you really want to focus on. How do you know? It's really easy to get drawn into how you could measure something. And I think what you're talking, so what I'm kind of trying to tease apart some threads, and I'm struck by the opening, Pam, your check-in about how valuable it was in a timely way to check in with somebody who has a perspective that helped you in a real life situation. And ultimately, that's what, in my mind, the ideal behind social media and using the three circles. The relationship with the 90%, I think, is simple and can be light and not a lot of effort, which is pump out memes, right? And once you have memes, you can recycle them. We've got lots of memes, and we've got a system where it's pretty easy to capture a new idea, and you're not expecting that everyone's seen everyone and like will say, oh, didn't they do this one last year? So it's used, and I think that's, the understanding that relationship to the 90% is, where are the venues where we're just letting people know that we're thinking about these things, and that if they want to, they can reach out. So it's a lot the memes, and a little bit, here's how to get in touch with us. And that doesn't have to really be anything much more than that. But then where I am more interested is in, or what I'm more interested in, is how do we actually stay connected enough that you know who to turn to when something comes up. It's the networky part of the social network. Um, yeah, and that's where, and then the other theme, Pam, that I think you're putting your finger on is, what's the right level? The Goldilocks zone, not too much, not too deep, not too light, not too, infrequent, whatever. Um, And I think, and I'm also hearing in rely, oh, I'm violating my rule too. So I think that for me, what I'm hearing is there's a difference. I think that there's the relationship with the 90%, which is that meme dropping, keep it light, keep it simple, and it doesn't really matter whether it's on Mastodon or Blue Sky or Facebook. It's all the same. You just repost it in different formats to, the different channels, and we're not expecting a lot of conversation around them, so it's not that big a deal to monitor. But then what do we have for actually knitting us together in a way that's the right level? Okay, I got rambly. Over to you, Roland.
Okay, what do I want to talk about? Which one of the things that we're talking about that I want to talk about? Um, uh, I I feel like at the beginning, my first point was trying to think through the sort of an order of discussion. And I think really, Pam, you put your finger right on it. What's the intention? What's wanted with spending this time and energy with social media? What do we want it to do? So I think that I would like to start. I would propose that we start there to have a clear plan, a clear experiment uh, to put into. How do you say that? You got an experiment, you're testing it out. No, you're running the experiment. An experiment to run. There we go. A clear experiment to run, so that, you know, blah 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 blah, all that experimental language stuff. Over to you, Pam.
No, I'm dazzled by the technical language. Um, the that puts me into a side place of, yeah, so much hinges on the intention. And so, and I'm also thinking of my experience with the digital interface with the social media and the website with now this, I'm a novice. I'm just learning how to do this stuff. So I hope I'm not stepping out of the lines too much. The with the website and then the social media. And finding that I can't extrapolate what the intention is solely from looking at the stuff that's online compared with my experience when I'm with the Lifeboat Academy. So much happens here that I feel barely a trace of it is legible in these other spaces. So with regard to intention, how aligned or how much do you want the social media online presence to do you want to reflect what actually happens in this space, like these spaces?
That over to me.
Ben, please.
Well, and I think that then circles back to the testimonial thing, and in part because how do you capture that from the very beginning? And I guess maybe this is also what's the 20 that gets you 80, because I am not convinced there is a way of capturing the experience of it in words. Like, I just don't even know if that is achievable. And so it's kind of like, well, do you want to fight that battle? You know, and really what we want is people to show up to have the experience. So what's necessary, you know, what's actually necessary to get people to show up and have the experience? I have no interest in tracking how many people look at our website. If they never show up at anything, I don't care if they look at the website. I mean, I care if they're sort of getting the wrong message and getting pushed away. But if they're expecting something to come from the experience of the website, they're looking to the wrong model, you know, like anyhow, I feel like this is always the challenge that we have in that I was just reading something about there's a thing called game B, and it juxtaposes itself to game A, which is business as usual world. And one of the things that they talk about is it's always dangerous to talk about game B because you get drawn into using game A language to describe it because that's all people know. And it it corrupts their understanding of game B before they even understand it because they sort of lay on this game A lens. And I feel like, and I think that that's kind of, there's a part of me that says that's just part of the serenity prayer. You have to accept that. There's no way we're gonna, or I don't, maybe it's, I can back off of that. I don't know how to tackle that. And we've been jousting at that windmill for a couple of years. So maybe it just makes sense to, well, I guess then that still comes back to the question of that, like we were thinking about the testimonials as a click closer because it's people actually talking about their experience rather than trying to abstractly describe it. So I don't know, maybe that just brings us back to that's the right experiment to run, but how do you do it? Over to you, Rowan.
Uh, Yeah, my processing ability is impaired. I'm just looking at what you wrote to try to understand what you just said, what you're writing to be able to understand what you just said. But I was thinking, and I will talk and then I will read because you're still typing. Um, I was thinking language is the useful lie, and you can't fully express an experience in words. That's the trying to translate your experience into a language, a verbal language. But what do we need to communicate enough to be able to draw people into into allowing themselves to have the experience to then decide, is this something that I want to do? So, so I think and words short of having, so this is how to have people come and have the experience, and that has to happen through words in one way or another. Um, and I was actually just wondering, I don't know if I have maybe maybe I have, but very rarely have I had the opportunity to have a really interesting sharing of a philosophical discussion through social media. Does that happen? And how frequently does it happen? And how does it happen? Maybe the big question is, how does it happen if it does? So over to about over to you, Pam. I'm gonna get myself a glass of water. I can still hear. I'm just getting water.
Um, well, it was interesting getting a little bit sharpening the focus on intention. And if the intention is to get people to show up for the experience, and the question is then how to make it happen. And then throwing out possibilities like testimonials, this notion of getting a click closer. Um, when I'm going onto a site, my attention span is pretty short, but brief, I agree that brief testimonials that speak to the relationality and the applicability of, where you get a gist of, oh, there are people who have tools, who know how to problem solve this or that, or increase clarity, you know, name whatever it is. Um, that I can see being helpful to make something visible that's currently kind of hard to see. And also anything that expands the scope of it. Like there's this one thing, these people who have a lot of tools, but no concept of just how broadly applicable they could be across multiple contexts. And that's something that's really evolved in my understanding, is how, like, I have only recently felt that my co-op context fit into the Lifeboat Academy. I'm still not exactly clear on how fully it can translate, but that one experience gave me a pretty good idea of that power on the level of one
Mhm.
that you kind of want to take up a few notches. So how do you get more people to how do you get people curious? Um, just get them like, oh, I know enough to be interested in wanting to know more. Um, okay, Ben.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Um, so how do we do that? But I think that really is, um, I'm banging this drum this week. I've heard it mentioned before, but this was the first week I actually did a little exploring about the adjacent possible. And I feel like this is relevant here in terms of, if we think about this as a transformative process, and this is one of the things that we skate around all the time is, again, language is a useful lie and everything's a tool and a weapon. But there's a sort of spiritual quality to this, or existential quality to this, that has to do with letting go of the qualities around modernity and patriarchy, basically sort of infantilization, always deferring to experts, always thinking that there's a perfect way of doing it and you shouldn't do it unless you've got the certificate. And that things are very categorical, like this, rather than thinking there are life tools that are broadly applicable in many circumstances, but we think, oh no, it's this and it's this and it's this. So it's, one of the things we say is learning to unlearn to relearn. And and that's a process of steps, you know, where, and this is, I've always thought I can only talk in using a language that's effective for people that are coming from a context similar to mine. Like I can't really, people who are coming from a different, the only way I can really address a context is if I've experienced it somewhat. And I can talk about my experience and how it fits. I can kind of see myself where they are at. And so it's sort of like if everyone reaches a hand behind them, there's that expression about like everyone reaches down and pulls somebody up a rung. And, we're getting pulled up a rung and we're pulling up a rung. And that's kind of, for me, that's how I'm understanding that adjacent possible, that I can kind of understand people that are like a step or two ahead of me. And I can talk to people who are a step or two or maybe three behind me. But too much distance and experience, and I don't have language. The words don't mean the same to me anymore. That they mean, I don't even understand where they're coming from. So yeah, how do we lean into that? And I think then that's making me think it's more of how can we use social media to enhance one-to-one communication or few-to-few communication rather than thinking of it as a mass market tool, where we're trying to think of messages that broadly fit lots of people, but instead we're offering things that are uh, more individual, or something like that. I don't know. I think these are interesting ideas, and I'm also trying to think about how we start to pull this back towards something. Um, so actually, I'm gonna put out that question now: is there a so what here? Is there something that we can use to figure out how to focus our efforts for the next couple of months? Um, and if you have any thoughts about it, that's great. And if not, no worries. It's not all your job. Over to you, Roland.
Well, and I guess to try to create some parameters, um, I'm just going to go over what I understood of what we were just talking about in terms of what we want how social media can be used and what we wanted to do. And essentially it is to act as the recruiter to a broader audience than we would be able to do individually. Ultimately, it would be fantastic if the Lifeboat Academy became a word of mouth kind of thing. And I think this is one of the ways in which social media can be used as a kind of what's the word, inertia transformer to get things going. So right. So social media is a tool to be able to let people know that the Lifeboat Academy exists, and to spark enough curiosity to have to open themselves up to experiencing the Lifeboat Academy. And I think I'm wanting to look at what the intention is in using it to be able to then go into the how it can do that. I just want to be clear about what we think the intention is. Over to Pam.
Well, can
Yeah,
I just
there's
ask a quick question, Roland? Did you say Lifeboat Academy becomes a household name, or was it a different term?
Yeah, different term. That people learn about it through word of mouth.
Thanks. Over to you, Pam.
yeah, it seems having a clear intention is really key. Of everything kind of falls on that. So if it's going to be like the main entry point, is it going to be the main entry point? Like, I guess it's partly is there's the intention, and then where it fits into the map of other kinds of outreach. How much, and I do wonder about the fragmentation of the landscape. So I'm not going to be going to multiple portals myself. So blue sky, will I not go to blue sky? Who would I share this with? Because the current things that I'm sharing with are local, and everybody there is locally on, that platform. If the intention is to increase the number of people, I guess, who go to the website, because it's through the website that people are going to then find out how they get in touch with people or get more information about what the Lifeboat Academy is, etc. I'm assuming that would be kind of the trajectory. Unless there are links, of course, but the links in Facebook would probably go to the website. Um, I'm not sure how to proceed here. I've got notions that fly through that may not apply to the category, that include considerations like testimonials are one thing, but also broadcasting that meetings are happening. We're having a meeting this time. See you there. Only the people who know about the meeting will know, get the email, etc. But everybody else is going to see, oh, this is happening. And that broadcasts, oh, it's called outreach, or oh, it's called, this or that. I mean, this is stuff that's going on. What's that all about? at some point I find myself wanting to talk about the website and how different it looks to me now that I'm looking at it through the eyes of the people who I want to direct to it. And well, people just sort of seem to slam up against it and then slide down off it. And how to get that curiosity. So testimonials and visible activity, tracks of activities shows that this is what happens here, like is happening, you know. Okay, then.
This is making me think of a couple different things. Um, I am under I think we talked about this, but we haven't revisited it in a while. But we don't think the website is the main entry point. We actually think relationships are the main entry point. So the way that we are primarily focusing our recruitment is through people who are already talking about it. So what you are doing in terms of thinking about reaching out to your local communities and other people in the co-op and that sort of thing. So then that becomes, what are the tools that you need to reach out to your people? And how can we help with that? And I think this brings me back to the kind of the three circles from Social Roots, and being able to identify if we had some language to put around, I mean, we already have language like Lifeboat Builder, which is like local coordinator, who the local coordinators in the community are not, they don't use the same language and they're not going to respond to the same materials that the people that they're trying to recruit into their projects are going to respond to. There's a kind of, well, and Roland and I just had this experience yesterday of looking at some bioaccumulate stuff. And, you know, we were trying to figure out who are his colleagues on these different projects. And I got to say, the website left me completely flat. I know bioaccumulate. I've heard him speak. I got really excited. I think he's got fantastic ideas. But when I looked at that website, I thought, my first thought was, this is not for me. Like, this is not for my people. And so what was it signaling in there? But then it's, I think what you were saying, Pam, it's like, who's the audience that I'm thinking about? And the people that I need to talk to are, so there's this sort of horizontally, what lifeboat builders are going to be able to acknowledge and recognize and resonate with is not the same as the communities that the lifeboat builders are trying to talk to. So there's like sort of two, it's almost like there's a parallel track of communications. So there's speaking to other coordinators and the unique challenges that happen there. And assuming also that, you know, I think coordinators are, or lifeboat builders are a step or two along in terms of connecting dots. And so I think that's one of the challenges is, yeah, I think it's, and in Social Roots, they call it, I think they call it a multi-sided, a three-sided platform, so that it looks different to the three different audiences. How it works and what it looks like is different depending on, yeah, anyhow, so this is just bringing me back to Social Roots as maybe that's part of the experiment, figuring out how we use that tool, how that might fit in with what we're talking about. And in part, it's developed because of the the fractional nature of things, one of the things that they found is for the 90%, nobody wants any other app or platform or anything. It's like, I'm already overwhelmed with too many options. All I want is email. Just send me an email when I need to know something. So that's why it's email centric, even though it's connected in all these other ways. So yeah, I think my takeaway there is it's sort of what are the tools that the tools that will attract Lifeboat Builder, or the messages that will attract lifeboat builders are not the same messages that lifeboat builders need to attract people to their lifeboat. So over to you, Roland.
This may be my left brain going into overdrive, but I'm wondering if it would be useful to actually have categories and just to describe what the tools are. Like when we talk about social media, not only what do we mean vaguely in terms of social media, but what are the actual platforms that we're referring to? Um, uh, so there's that, and there was something else as well, another sort of category. And what I'm hearing is that the main portal are the people, the people who are already engaged in the Lifeboat Academy, and that the website and the social media and the whatnot, whatever else, are the tools that can be used by those people, are some of the tools that those people can use to talk to other people. And if that's the case, then that becomes a lens through which to look at these at how the tools are configured. Which sounds really interesting, and I don't know where to start. And it comes back to something I think that that Pam was talking about earlier, is how to evaluate effectiveness. And it's not just effectiveness of individual social medias. I would expand it to effectiveness in sort of this suite of tools that can be used by individuals that are part of the Lifeboat Academy. Over to Pam.
Part of me just wants to say that it's fascinating to be here and do this spiral around this. Logs on a fire. The thing with the website is that I really like it. Like the Bioeconomology and company websites are corporate websites for my taste. And everything about the vibe of the Lifeboat Academy website, I think, is just bang on. So if the people are the number one entry point, it's just an interesting experience. You know, like I'm a pretty ordinary person, not particularly, not a star. There's no great, like, I'm not going to walk in a room and people are going to wonder, like, this woman knows something that I want to know, right? And yet I do feel I know something that I would like other people to know. if there is curiosity. And I would like to be able to, where I don't know how to communicate better, or point people in the direction where they can learn more about what it seems to me a no-brainer that they should be liking to learn about. How to get from, like in terms of an experiment, if I'm an experiment, how do I become an expression of that process of person to place? Other than what I have been doing, which is speaking to people about it and seeing if there's any curiosity. And I just remark, like, I guess the thing is that you find the people who hear you. I guess that's the thing, is not to try to, um, but I have it down on the agenda for the one committee that I'm in that is, I think, a lifeboaty kind of place, to consider meeting with the academy, like coming into a place, and I want to find out, where is that place that I would want to invite them into, um, so that the four of us on that committee just appear with, where is that entry point, for people who are kind of goal oriented, and just want to find a way to, like, one of the questions that would be brought into it, for example, would be, I anyway, this is like so this is like a test case. Um, how to engage with co-op members about biodiversity, conversion of the lawn into something that's more biodiverse. Is that a question that fits with a lifeboat? Okay, so if that's like an experiment for a possible engagement, what are the steps to take to make the invitation, grab their curiosity, because we are people who do not know what we're doing. So we should be very curious about, oh, holy cats, don't have to do it alone. So with other project people who are talking about how they're doing their projects, like, that was a really interesting space to be in. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it at there, where I'm trying to put skin on the abstraction of this process. And if it could work in this instance, it could be something that could be testimonial for other similar. Oh, Ben.
Like, halos, shafts of light, rainbows. I think this is exactly it. And I think this is from my money, this is the essence of the Lifeboat Academy, is that we take all of these direct experiences and we think, how can I do this in a way where it's, I'm going to set myself up for the best experience possible. And no matter what, I'm going to draw on the experience of my peers to set myself up as good as I can. And then regardless of how it goes, that's going to be learning that gets shared and we all get stronger. And it's total, this is my idea of reciprocity, because this is absolutely the ideal test case, because this is the kind of stuff that everyone is facing, right? We have the same thing with the Lifeboat Academy. We get people who are in different levels of readiness at the same time, and how do you balance, you know, do you wait to try to bring this slow person up to speed, or do you say you catch up? There's interest here to move forward, all those sort of practical challenges. And how do we do it? And so I think being able to present that as a case study for other people to kind of like a sounding board. Here's my situation. And then kind of a gathering considerations. What might you do? You get to run your own experiment, but then we're all kind of waiting how'd that go, you know? So it also builds in, there's social support around it. It's not just you in the meeting, right? Even to the level of there's somebody that's there with you to prep it and then also there with you to debrief it. And we all get a little smarter. And I think that it's, for me, the more like I love that there's a lawn, like there's that spot out there, those plants that we want to put into it, and those people looking out the windows at that space, like it's as, real as it gets. And those people looking through the windows with their own histories and personalities and, you know, um, and a name. So I think this is great. And it does make me think of um, it seems like there's at least two layers on which I like Roland's idea of, can we be more concrete about when we say social media, and we can lump them together, Mastodon and Blue Sky are the same thing as far as I'm concerned, right? Like they're little posts and people engage with them about the same way. MailChimp is different and the website is different. And they're all social media. But kind of being able to kind of put it into concrete buckets. And actually, I wonder if we broaden it beyond social media and we say, what are our communication tools? Because it might be, I think I'm getting an intuitive sense that they're going to be, these are the tools that are great for interacting with the 90% without any expectation. These are the tools that we use when we're communicating with the adjacent possible folk, who may be receptive, might be open to something. And these are the tools that we use when we're talking among ourselves. This is where we go to have our huddles and etc. So, and I'm not sure if that's at a kind of a concrete enough level that we can say there's next steps, but I'm excited about it. I feel like in some ways, I feel like we've reinvented the wheel, but I think we've done so. I think we've really refined the intention behind, because it's not one intention. I think that's maybe one of the big things we've identified here is there's multiple intentions depending on who we're talking to. Over to you, Roland.
I'm not sure if I have anything to add. We've gone over a lot of stuff, and I think being able to see it a bit condensed and organized would help me figure out what to do with it at this point with my tired head. Over to Pam.
I like your modeling of respect for limits. Well, I think it feels like there are all kinds of openings. And it'll be, I utterly agree with you, Roland, that this has been a pretty robust dump. And now you have to go and sort through everything and find out what the keepers are. So there's a lot here. It excites me to see the possibility of the academy moving into different communities. It would be lovely to see how that experiment can go. Ben.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and I also like thank you, Roland, for good modeling, and I agree. I feel like um there's this whole thing too about brainstorming is this divergent convergent thinking, and they're different parts of your brain, and you don't do a good job of trying to do both at the same time. And I feel like we did a lot of divergent thinking, which is really useful. And then next step is kind of boil it down a little bit. But I feel like there is tangible next step kind of elements in here. Um, and I'm thinking about connections with other projects that I'm connected with. That I sent out my research invitation, which I don't know, Pam, if we've talked at all about it, but there are some partners that are working on very similar. I keep thinking of the Venn diagram. I feel like we are bubbles around some sort of overlap in the middle. And I sent out an invitation to say, hey, I think we're all working on projects that we can, where there's some mutual benefit here. And the response already has been really positive. And I think it factors in here. Because Social Roots is actually one of the people I'm reaching out to. Like they are super, I hope they watch our videos because they're just brilliant and really such a depth of research that's gone into what they're doing. And they're really looking for guinea pigs. So, you know, if we can offer them a really good, juicy opportunity to test out what Social Roots is capable of, I get the feeling like they'll tailor it to, you know, to do what we need it to do. Um, anyhow, so all that's just by way of saying I'm really excited. I feel like this was a really good conversation and look forward to whatever comes next. And in the spirit of wrapping things up, I'm going to go once around just to see. I'm thinking that the big action item right now is we think about it and we come back at the next meeting and try to move it into something more concrete. And if there is any other action items that are more specific, then I would love to hear them. So Roland, over to you. Any action items coming up for you?
I no, not specifically. Uh, well, no, not really. I was just thinking about um, it's encouraging to me to hear that I really like the term knowledge keeper. People with not just school smarts, but people with experience willing to share, and thinking about people who are knowledge keepers who may not fully appreciate their what they have to offer. So this is a bit of an aside, but it's a little bit like being able to track in some way the experiences people have through the Lifeboat Academy as being a way of indicating that they are knowledge keepers in one way or another. Um, yeah, personally, I learn a lot from what again, my brain is not um it's not apocryphal, it's the opposite of empirical. No. Anyway, uh when people just talk, they talk about their experiences. There's a word for that.
Anecdotal?
Anecdotal. I learn a lot from hearing about anecdotal evidence. I learn a lot from anecdotal evidence. Uh, and I think that that's one of the ways in which people don't recognize that their experience allows for other people to do some of that right brain. This is my right brain kind of activity to put things together. So a bit of an aside. I'm sorry, I don't mean to detract from the question. I can't think of a specific next step thing. I think that's in part why I was saying being able to see things a little bit more condensed to get a better handle on all of the ideas that have come through in this session would probably help me figure out what next steps are. So probably the next step is condensing the information so that it's more easily understood. Over to Pam.
That's exactly what I was thinking is if the notes can be put into some sort of summary form, my action statement will be to review them. And so uh, remind me of the protocols. If once they're up, is there a message sent out that the notes are now available? The other thing that I want to do is go over the website with one of the other people on the committee and just get their feedback without having seen it before, of just where do you feel drawn in, where do you not feel drawn in, and just have that one set of that one little data set to give me a more concrete notion of that to bring in. Yeah. Ben.
Yeah, that sounds great. Cool. Yeah, no, this sounds great. And yeah, Ron, I really like and that makes me think of the badges in part, badges and tokens. But I think there is something in here. There's a really big thing in here about acknowledgement. And that's the peer-to-peer part. I think it's reciprocity, acknowledgement, all that kind of stuff around. Well, again, I think this is part of decolonizing ourselves, is that we've all been brainwashed to think that we don't know enough. And we got to wait for some smart person to come along and tell us what to do, as opposed to, we made it this far. We apparently have some set of skills. We've been able to accomplish a certain amount of things. So anyhow, I think that, how do we honor the inner knowledge keepers? And yeah, and I guess since I am the surrogate circle keep or caretaker for today, it'll be between me and Ronnie. It'll probably be to me since I was here to try to parse the notes a little bit and send them out. So I'll put my name on that. And Pam, that sounds like a great little project. And I think that's good for now then. So quick round of closing. So last thoughts for the good of the cause. Roland, over to you.
I think I kind of spewed my last thoughts already. So I'll just pass over to Pam.
Yes, with the hospicing book club, we're right now on the chapters about arrogance and getting to zero, and both of those are speaking exactly to what you're talking about with not knowing what you know because it's not credentialized, or the greater than, lesser, all of those kinds of things, and what an extraordinary what a culture we've been growing up in. It's amazing that the curtain is being pulled back on wizard. Okay, then.
Yeah. It just makes me think of how many times I've sat in a meeting where people say, I probably shouldn't say anything. I don't really know. And then they just unfold some brilliant insight that like changes everything. But it's always, we're all conditioned to like, well, I probably shouldn't say anything. I don't know anything. We know more than we think. Um,
And
but
sometimes we know less than we think.
well, also
Mm.
that, right?
Mm.
Yeah, totally.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
the arrogance
curiosity.
part of it is a real thing too.
Yeah, this is true too.
Yeah,
This is
and
true.
I think it's also an indication of the devaluation of right brain type of knowing.
Yeah.
Uh, and I when often when because I feel like that, I feel like I don't really know anything, and but then I think that my right brain will put things together, and sometimes I talk and I try to look down at my lips to try to figure out who's doing the talking.
Yeah. Well, and it's so traumatic too. I think that it's also the saying I don't know brings about this like I'm gonna get hit,
Mm,
you know? It's sort of there's such a condition you're supposed to know and you can't know and
mm,
put in we were talking just last week about acknowledging my imperfectibility. It's not just that I'm imperfect. I ain't never gonna be perfect. Doesn't matter how hard I try, I can still get better, right? It's that Maya Angelou, when I know better, I can do better. So I can do better, but I got to let go of this whole perfection thing.
That's a
Right?
cultural co
Yeah.
collective thing
Yeah.
of holding and sharing and helping and all this stuff. It is amazing. It's a thrill actually to be going through this book again, and I even wonder if there is a space for a book club on the Lifeboat Academy. The it seems like such a foundational piece to
Yeah.
if you can get over the language.
mm.
Oh, I'd love to. Actually, I was intending to join when you sent the link. I was thinking because I want to go back and kind of do a deeper dive in. I love ask Roland. I was pretty much like read a page and go talk to him about it and read a page. And
I feel like I've read it.
yeah, but I just didn't. It's the time kind of
Oh, of
came and
course.
went, and
Hey, everybody. Yeah, that's about maybe that is something that could happen at the academy. Maybe there would be an audience.
yeah.
That.
And I think it's keying it into an experiment. Like, it's for me as I want to keep it from being just academic. I have developed a sort of how people get environmental sensitivity from being exposed to too many chemicals. I sort of have that from armchair theorists, people who just sit around talking in abstract language with no intention of doing anything. It just sets my hair on edge. So, are my teeth on edge?
Teeth.
Yeah, it says my teeth
Your
on
hair
edge.
on your teeth.
Yeah, makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Anyhow, we could probably continue for a while, and we're kind of at time, and we're closed up. Or we've closed our work. So I'm going to say goodbye and thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time and around in between.
Okay, thank you very much, you guys. See you.
Hmm. Bye bye.